so this will be another attempt to kind of see what I look like on camera, how I move around the room. So essentially what I'm going to attempt is I'm going to do a mire drill, and I'm going to stand back. I think I'm probably out of frame back here, so maybe this last square is my furthest back I want to go. But essentially what I want to do is demonstrate, well, I'll start with the Marozzo cuts. So Marozzo, who is one of the fencing masters from the Bolognese or the Dardi school of fencing, approximately 1530, he defines cuts in the following ways. First of all, in Bolognese fencing, they make a distinction between right and left. So anything coming from the right-hand side would be dritto, short for mandrito, and anything coming from the left would be a reverso. So the first cuts are the fendente, which is a descending vertical cut. So you'd have fendente dritto and reverso fendente. Or is that right? Would it be dritto fendente and fendente reverso? It doesn't really matter. I mean, these are Italian names. So you have the fendente, dritto, and reverso. You have the squalembrato, which are the diagonal cuts. Again, dritto and reverso. Now, see, I have to be very careful with this left to right or right to left ascending cut because I don't have a lot of clearance thanks to my treadmill. But it's actually, it forces you to focus that much more and cut at a perfect 90-degree angle, because you would generally be less strong in this direction than you would be in this direction. So this direction, you're using more powerful muscles. It's easier to control and keep it in a 45-degree angle. So again, fendente, fendente. Let's try this. I have a beam right above my head here from which the chain of the pendulum is suspended. So, fendente, reverso fendente, squalembrato, reverso squalembrato, tondo, reverso tondo. And then the rising cuts are the falso, meaning you're cutting with the false edge. So you have mandrito falso, reverso falso, and then you also have, with the true edge, the montante. So, once again, I'm holding the buckler out. Fendente mandrito, fendente reverso. Squalembrato mandrito, squalembrato reverso. Tondo mandrito, reverso tondo. Mandrito falso, reverso falso, montante. Those are the cuts of the Bolognese system. Now the next thing I want to do is we're moving to the German school. And German, the main, well, there's Lichtenauer tradition, but the later treatise is mostly Meyer. Meyer's when you get into the, let's say 1550 and beyond. By this point, fencing is more of a sport than a martially useful activity. And he comes up with what's known as the Meyer square. The idea behind the Meyer square is that you have four openings, essentially. If you're unarmored, these four openings would be the limbs, the hands, and the legs, because these are the parts of your opponent that are closest and easiest to attack. If you're fighting an armored opponent, which is generally the case in European combat, you're going to be going for the joints, the armpits and the hips, because these are the places where you have the least amount of armor because you need to have freedom of mobility. So this is essentially four good targets, and in European swordsmanship, you're generally going to close off two of those four by assuming a guard position. Well, I guess it would cut off one of those four. So you can have a high right, high left, low right, and low left. And the idea behind the Meyer square is to train targeting the four openings and moving from one opening to the other. And it's essentially a flow drill. you're trying to make transitions smoothly so that when you're in a combat situation, you automatically make these movements without really having to stop and think about it. So the way I do the Meyer drill is I alternate between cuts and thrusts. So I'll go through it once with cuts, then I'll do thrusts, then I'll do false edge cuts, and then the last time around I like to do a double cut where you start with the false edge and complete with the true edge. So if you can see on my pad here, I've got the numbers here, and this also helps with your situational awareness, because you have to, actually look. I suppose you could memorize the drill, but it helps you to keep your eyes looking for openings as you try and figure out where to cut next. So I'm going to start with my pendulum here. You can either use the pendulum as a target, or you can use it as a metronome and strike the pad. I'm going to do this as a metronome exercise. I did it a little out of sequence, but the idea is to just go slow and practice these movements. So again, we'll do it one more time. Actually, I did that incorrectly. So that's the general idea. Going back to Marozzo, at least with the side sword, I don't know the name, so I'm not going to be specific, but he identifies different ways of thrusts. And essentially, you do these three quadrants for a thrust. You don't do this thrust because this presents your back to the opponent and you're not very strong. You don't have good blade control from this position. So that's essentially how I use my training device. Just to talk about the training device in general, there's three components here. There's a post, a pendulum, and a pad. I probably should have talked about this to begin with. But generally in swordsmanship, you would start out cutting against a wooden post with a sharp steel sword. I don't do that for obvious reasons. I'm in a confined space. Swinging a steel sword around would, at the bare minimum, be very damaging to my home gym. So I use these synthetic nylon wasters. And the idea is, because they're smooth, which is actually one of the things people criticize the black fencers for, is they're kind of slick and they don't bind together in a natural way. But for training purposes, especially for solo training, they're good, because I don't want to damage my sparring partner, or in this case, my heavy punching bag. I'm going to switch to the cutlass just to change things up a little bit. But essentially for home training apparatus, I've kind of incorporated some notions from boxing training. So you have a heavy bag and an agility bag. And the heavy bag is for developing power and also for focusing on your footwork, because you move as the bag moves. So if I want to, I can do I can practice cutting on that. And if you do that in 3-minute bursts, as you would for boxing, you can develop some stamina. For the agility bag, as I said, I can use it in a variety of ways. I can just focus on the post and moving around the target. I can use the pendulum as a target. And you'll notice this is a 5-foot barbell, and my target lines up. If I just stick my arm out here and I close my eyes, I should be able to cut without banging into the post. If I am getting sloppy though, and I drop either my elbow or my blade, I'm going to catch that post, or conversely, if I'm too high, I'm going to catch the chain. So that allows you to kind of zero in and use precise cutting motions so that your edge alignment is correct. That's the idea behind the post. Pendulum, you can use it as a cutting target or a metronome, as I said, and then the pad kind of decelerates your blade, gives you a somewhat authentic feel as you stab or cut, and you can put the numbers on there and it gives you something to look at. So I was kind of a rambling, incoherent explanation, but I really just wanted to test the camera and show you how I do the sword fighting. So eventually we'll get to the script writing phase, and hopefully that will help make these lessons or videos a little more informative rather than just my rambling stream of consciousness. But anyway, thank you for watching. Please leave me any feedback you have. Thank you.